All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're going deep on self-sabotage.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, so we're diving into Brianna Wiest's book, The Mountain Is You. And
Oh, I love that book.
yeah, it's really insightful. And we're going to try to figure out why we get in our own way when we're trying to be successful. And I think what's really interesting about this book is
Oh, yeah, definitely.
it says that it's not just self-hatred.
Right. It kind of flips that whole idea on its head, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Like, one of the most interesting things I found in this book is this idea that self-sabotage is like a way of us getting these unconscious needs met that come from our past, and it's almost like we're trying to protect ourselves.
Oh, wow.
Even if it means, like, holding ourselves back.
So it's not that we consciously want to fail.
No, not at all. And Wiest actually starts the book with this story about Carl Jung,
Oh, wow.
the psychologist, and how when he was a kid, he would pretend to be sick so he didn't have to go to school. Oh, wow.
And later in life, he realized this was his subconscious trying to like remove him from this situation that was causing him distress.
So even Jung was self-sabotaging.
Yeah, like even the most brilliant minds can fall prey to this.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting how these actions that we think are self-destructive can actually serve a purpose even if we don't know what it is.
Right.
Like it's not always conscious.
Yeah, and Wiest calls it maladaptive coping mechanisms.
It's kind of like our shield to protect us from having to confront these like deeper needs that we have.
Yeah.
But the problem is we're not actually addressing the root cause.
Right.
So it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Oh, really?
You're not actually going to heal it.
It's not going to fix it.
Yeah, you're just masking it.
Yeah. So how do we even begin to understand what these unconscious needs are?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Wiest explores some of the root causes.
Okay.
And one of them is this idea of irrational fear.
We might be afraid of success, or afraid of vulnerability, or just afraid of moving forward.
So can you give me an example of how that might look like in someone's life?
Sure. So let's say someone has a really hard time being a passenger in a car.
Okay.
So like they're terrified to be a passenger.
Okay.
So on the surface, it seems like they're afraid of the car or something.
Right.
But maybe underneath it all,
Yeah.
it's a fear of giving up control,
Oh, wow.
of not being the one in the driver's seat of their life.
Huh. That's deep.
Yeah. And, you know, it makes you wonder, like,
Yeah.
how many of our fears are just these, like, symbolic things of deeper anxieties. Another root cause that Wiest talked about is negative associations that we form based on our early experiences and our beliefs. Like, our self-concept can actually link success with bad things.
So like if you grew up and people always told you like money's the root of all evil,
Yeah, exactly.
you're going to subconsciously sabotage yourself when it comes to money.
Yeah, you're going to associate wealth with negativity. And then another concept she talks about is the upper limit problem.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
So this comes from Gay Hendricks.
Okay.
And he says, we all have this ceiling for how much joy we think we deserve.
Oh, wow.
And when we get close to that limit,
Yeah.
our subconscious is like, nope, bring it back down.
Oh, so we almost resist our own happiness,
Yeah, it's like we're wired to stay at a certain level of familiarity.
even if it's bad for us.
Exactly, even if it's making us unhappy.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
It's like we're fighting ourselves.
Yeah, in a way.
But how do we know if we're in this cycle?
Well, Wiest talks about how important it is to be honest with ourselves, to really self-reflect. But she also points out that denial is a huge obstacle.
Oh, yeah.
She actually says, if you're always justifying your unhappiness, you're probably avoiding real change.
Right. Because you always have a reason why it's not working.
Exactly.
You never have to look at yourself.
You're off the hook.
Yeah, you are.
So if we think we might be self-sabotaging, how do we figure out where it's happening?
Yeah, where are we doing it?
Well, Wiest says just start by looking at different areas of your life, like your health, or are you procrastinating on a great business idea, or are you super anxious, even though things seem to be going well?
So is it like our external reality versus our internal reality?
Exactly. It's that disconnect.
Okay.
And you know what's really fascinating is that self-sabotage can show up.
Oh, I bet.
In so many different ways.
I bet.
Yeah, one common form that she talks about is called uprooting.
Uprooting. What is that?
It's like this constant need for a fresh start.
Okay.
Always jumping from one job to the next or one city to the next and never really settling down.
Oh, so they're always starting a new chapter, but never finishing the last one.
Exactly. Oh. And then another classic self-sabotage is perfectionism.
Oh, yeah.
Where we get so caught up in wanting to do everything perfectly that we never actually make any progress.
We're always preparing.
Yeah, we're always getting ready to live,
right,
but never actually living.
Wow.
And then there's the emotional suppressor.
Whoa, what is that?
This is someone who bottles up their feelings because they don't have good coping mechanisms. Yeah. So they have all these emotions inside. Yeah. But they're only letting a tiny bit out.
And Wiest says if we only process half our emotions,
right,
we only live half the life we desire.
Yeah. It's a powerful statement.
Yeah, it is.
And then there's this trap of justification.
Oh, what's that?
It's where we focus so much on our intentions, but not the outcomes. Like, we can have all these great plans, but if we don't take action, those intentions are meaningless.
It's all talk and no action.
Exactly. And it's so easy to get caught up in explaining why we haven't done something instead of just doing it.
It's way easier to make excuses.
Yeah. And remember, at the end of the day, our lives are measured by what we achieve.
That's right.
Not by the reasons we give for not achieving.
Right.
And speaking of getting things done, disorganization can also be a form of self-sabotage.
Really? How so?
It's not just about being messy. No. It can be a way of creating chaos.
Oh, wow.
So that we don't have to face the reality of showing up and doing the work.
So when everything's in order,
right,
you have no excuse.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And then, sometimes we sabotage ourselves by holding on to things that we don't really want.
Like what?
Like an outdated dream or someone else's expectations for us or maybe a job that's making us miserable.
Yeah.
We cling to familiarity even when it's not good for us.
Right.
And another way we sabotage ourselves is by staying in these bad situations.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're afraid to ask for help, driven by pride and caring more about appearances than our well-being.
That's so common. And then there's this thing called guilt of succeeding.
Right.
Feeling like we don't deserve to be happy.
Especially when there's so much suffering in the world.
Yeah, like how can I be happy when so many other people are struggling?
Right.
It's like we don't allow ourselves to feel joy.
Yeah, and then we also downplay our achievements.
Oh, yeah.
We try to shrink ourselves to fit in.
Right.
Or we're afraid of peaking too soon.
Wow.
We downplay our successes because we're scared of what comes next.
Oh, so we're afraid of our potential.
Yeah, and busyness can be a trap too.
Oh, really?
We fill our schedules to distract ourselves from our emotions, and we avoid self-reflection.
We don't want to slow down.
We don't want to look inward.
Right.
And then we worry about all these irrational fears.
Oh, yeah, like all the what ifs.
The worst case scenarios.
Well,
the things that probably won't even happen.
Right.
And it's like we're using those fears to avoid the real ones.
Yeah, the ones underneath.
The deeper fears.
Wow. So there are a lot of ways we self-sabotage.
Yeah. Wiest gives us all these different ways that it can show up in our lives.
Yeah, but the big question is, what can we do about it?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about next.
Awesome. I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be good.
All right, everybody, stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
Okay, so we've talked about all these ways that we sabotage ourselves.
Yeah.
But how do we actually start changing these patterns?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, and Wiest talks about following our gut.
Right.
But then she also says, don't use it to predict the future.
Yeah, it's like intuition is really helpful for the present moment.
Okay.
But when we try to use it to control things that haven't happened yet, it can create a lot of anxiety.
So are you saying we should ignore our intuition?
No, not at all. It's valuable, but we need to be able to tell the difference between genuine intuition and like fear-based projections about the future.
So how can we tell the difference?
One way is to ask yourself, is this feeling based on what's actually happening right now? Or am I just reacting to something I'm imagining in my head?
So like if I'm worried about a presentation I have to give next week.
Yeah.
Is that my intuition telling me to prepare, or is it just anxiety?
Well, in that situation, a good question to ask yourself would be, what can I do right now to get ready? Because focusing on action in the present can really help ground you and calm those nerves.
So how can we actually use intuition in a good way?
Yeah, to help us overcome self-sabotage.
Right.
I think it's about noticing what feels right to you.
Okay.
Even if it's scary or makes you uncomfortable.
So like you feel drawn to something creative.
Yeah, exactly.
But you hesitate because it seems too risky.
Yeah, and that hesitation could be your intuition trying to push you outside of your comfort zone.
So it's not always about taking the easy road.
Nope. Sometimes it's about following that inner nudge.
Even if it's the harder path.
Even if it is.
And Wiest also talks about emotional intelligence.
Yes.
What is that?
It's basically the ability to understand and manage our emotions.
Okay.
So it's not just about feeling our feelings. Yeah. It's about knowing what they mean.
Okay.
And figuring out healthy ways to process them.
So those emotional suppressors we talked about.
Right.
They need to learn how to feel.
They need to let themselves experience the full range of emotions.
And how do they do that?
Well, Wiest gives some exercises.
Okay.
Like breath scans.
Okay.
To see where we're holding tension.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then journaling.
Okay.
To explore our emotions and thought patterns.
It's like being a detective of our own minds.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
And the more we understand about our emotions,
right,
the better choices we can make.
That makes sense.
And then she also talks about principles.
Okay, what are those?
They're like these fundamental truths that can lead to long-term results.
And how are they different from values?
Well, values can be subjective and change over time. Okay.
But principles are more about cause and effect.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So if you value financial freedom,
okay,
a principle that could support that would be living below your means.
Right. So it's a specific action
exactly
that will lead to that result.
Exactly. And in relationships, a principle could be honest communication.
Oh, okay.
So it's about having these guidelines to keep us on track.
All right. And then Wiest also talks about finding our purpose.
Yeah.
But she says it's not a destination.
Right. It's a journey.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
I think it's a really helpful way to look at it. Because it means we don't have to have everything figured out.
Right.
It's about constantly evolving and aligning ourselves with what matters.
So it's less about figuring out what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And more about what lights us up.
What makes us feel alive.
Exactly.
Wiest has this great question in the book.
What is it?
She asks, if social media didn't exist, what would you do with your life?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It makes you think about what's really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Beyond likes and external validation.
Right.
And then she talks about mastering the mind.
Which sounds kind of intense.
It does sound a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
But it's really about finding inner peace.
Okay.
And she draws from Buddhist teachings about non-attachment.
Non-attachment. What's that?
It's not about suppressing our thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
It's about learning to observe them without getting swept away.
So it's like watching a river flow.
Yeah, exactly.
You see the water moving, but you don't jump in and get carried away.
Right. And our thoughts and feelings are like that river.
They're constantly flowing.
And we don't have to believe everything we think.
So we can choose which thoughts to engage with.
Exactly.
And which ones to let go.
Exactly.
That's a cool concept.
And it can be really helpful for overcoming self-sabotage.
Yeah, because we're not letting those thoughts control us.
We're taking back our power.
Yeah, we are.
And then in addition to mastering the mind, she talks about building mental strength.
Okay.
And she brings in some insights from Amy Morin.
Oh, cool. What did you take away from that?
Well, one thing that really resonated with me was the importance of trusting yourself. Like having that deep inner knowing that everything's going to be all right.
Even when things are tough.
Yeah, it's like having faith in your own resilience.
Yeah, that you can handle whatever comes your way.
Exactly. And she also talks about setting aligned goals.
Okay.
So focusing on inner peace and fulfillment, not just chasing external success.
So that ties back into principles and purpose.
Yeah, exactly. It's all connected.
And she talks about detaching from worry.
Yeah, because worry doesn't actually solve anything.
Right. It just makes us feel worse.
It's like that saying, worrying is like paying interest on a debt you might never owe.
I like that.
And another important part of mental strength is asking for help.
Yeah.
It's about knowing when you need support.
And not being afraid to ask.
Right. And then she cautions against psychic thinking.
What is that?
It's when we try to predict the future.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on what we can do right now.
So again, it's about being present.
Exactly. And then she also talks about processing our emotions, like not just feeling them,
right,
but actually working through them in a healthy way.
So it's about emotional agility.
Yeah, and resilience.
Not about being happy all the time.
Exactly.
And it takes time.
It does. It's a process.
Right.
We got to be patient with ourselves.
Celebrate the small wins.
Absolutely.
And then she also talks about assertiveness.
Yes.
And managing our energy.
Yeah, being mindful of where we put our attention and focus.
That's so important.
It is.
And one of the things that I thought was really interesting
was
Wiest's emphasis on self-validation.
Oh, yeah. Instead of seeking it from others.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge.
She talks about acknowledging and validating our own feelings, even the negative ones.
Right.
Because they're a normal part of being human.
It's not about agreeing with our feelings or justifying them.
Yeah, it's about recognizing them without judgment.
Exactly. And when we do that, it allows them to move through us.
We're giving ourselves permission to feel without shame.
Yeah. And then she talks about letting go, especially of past experiences that are holding us back.
But that can be hard.
It can be really tough.
Why is that?
I think it's because we hold on to things as a way of protecting ourselves.
And even if it's not helpful.
Even if it's hurting us, we cling to the familiar.
Right.
Because we're afraid of the unknown.
So how do we let go?
Well, Wiest suggests going back to that memory.
Okay.
And offering wisdom and guidance to your younger self.
Oh, wow.
Like imagine a different narrative where you support and nurture that part of you that was hurt.
So we're rewriting the story.
Exactly. And by doing that, we can create a sense of healing and closure.
Yeah, powerful.
Yeah. And it allows us to move on with more peace and freedom.
And Wiest also challenges this idea of perfection. Is she saying we should stop trying to improve?
No, not at all.
Okay.
She's just pointing out that imperfection is a natural part of life.
Right.
And it's actually beautiful.
Okay.
It's about embracing the journey of becoming.
Yeah.
Not waiting for some perfect future version of ourselves to show up.
So we show up as we are.
Exactly. Flaws and all.
And we trust that we'll grow along the way.
Exactly. It's a process.
And that takes the pressure off.
Yeah. It's much more freeing.
Well, we have covered a lot in this deep dive into self-sabotage.
We have.
Yeah. From the root causes to how to actually, get over it. And I feel like we've actually started to climb that mountain that Wiest talks about.
Yeah, definitely.
But before we go, I just wanted to get your take on, what are the biggest takeaways for you?
You know, I think one of the things that really struck me is this idea that we actually have the power to understand and change these patterns.
Right.
It's not about beating ourselves up for our past mistakes. It's about learning to be more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
And being vulnerable and finding that inner strength.
And recognizing that self-sabotage isn't weakness.
Right.
It's like this misguided attempt to get our needs met.
Yeah, it's like our subconscious is trying to protect us.
Oh, wow.
But it's keeping us stuck.
Right.
In these patterns that don't serve us anymore.
It's like we're carrying this mountain inside of us.
Ooh, I love that.
A mountain made of fear and limiting beliefs and all that baggage.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It's heavy.
It is.
But we don't have to stay trapped at the bottom.
We have a choice.
Yeah.
We can climb.
Yeah, even if it's just one step at a time.
And Wiest gives us the tools to do that, like a map for this journey.
Yeah, it does take courage, though.
It does.
And compassion for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part.
It is.
Like facing those parts of ourselves that we've been avoiding.
But when we do, the rewards are amazing.
Yeah.
Like we unlock this freedom and joy.
We're freeing ourselves from our own prisons.
Exactly.
We become the architects of our own lives.
We do.
So before we go, I want to leave everyone with a question that Wiest asks in the book.
All right, and I'm ready.
She says, if your biggest fear is success, what does that tell you about your deepest desires and beliefs?
Wow, that is a powerful question.
It really is.
It makes you think about what's really holding you back.
Yeah, like what are we so afraid of?
Yeah.
And what would be possible if we could let go of that fear?
It's a call to action.
Yeah.
To step into our full potential.
To embrace the unknown.
Yeah.
And trust that we can handle it.
And to start climbing.
To start climbing our mountain.
Exactly.
I love that.
Me too.
Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
I'm so glad we got to explore this together.
Me too.
And to everyone listening, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.